Aren't you glad I didn't try to sing that for you? We have arrived at the end of the book of Song of Songs, this book in the Bible devoted to love, very specifically the love between a husband and a wife. And I think we can all agree that what we hope for in this is endless love. We want in this a love that endures and that does not stop. So let's go ahead and see how this wonderful book wraps up for us, how the story ends here for our shepherd man and his love, the vine-dressing farmer girl. Good grief, every time I change the orientation on this, it closes on me. Anyway, our series I've called Our Greatest Song. Would you advance the slide for me while this starts up? And I've titled today's message, Love Strong as Death. We're going to be looking at chapter 8 of Song of Songs. This doesn't seem to be working. Okay. Now, I've told you how I kind of see the overall structure of the book, and I do think we have in the center of the book a very large section that's made up of 4 dream sequences that kind of go back and forth between some concerns about the relationship and then some hopes and expectations about what married life is all to be about. And we've kind of gone back and forth with those two. Last week we had that second dream that kind of looks to this moment where their lives are being shared fully, where they can love one another, they can go out into the countryside, stay in the villages, lodge in the villages, do the bed and breakfast thing, get up early in the morning and see the beauties of nature and love one another in that context. We kind of saw that last Sunday. Now I believe we return to a situation where they are awake, where we return to them as a courting couple who have not yet been married, and we kind of pick up the story there. So we begin with her kind of wishful thinking. She says, "Oh, that you were like a brother to me who nursed at my mother's breasts. If I found you outside, I would kiss you, and none would despise me." She's pay attention to kind of the wish that's being desired here. She's not really wishing that he were her brother, because in that case he wouldn't be a candidate to be her husband. But she's talking about one reality of family life that would afford her some benefits she wishes she had. If she had him as her brother, she could... thank you so much. She could kiss him and nobody would think anything of it. She could give him a hug and a kiss and nobody would frown upon that. And apparently she lives in a culture where public displays of affection are frowned upon among courting couples. You wait until you're married for that kind of thing. But within families, it's normal to give someone a hug or a kiss as a greeting, that kind of thing. So she's saying, I wish we were in a circumstance where I could show my affection for you in public and people would not frown on me. If I found you outside, I would kiss you and none would despise me. I would lead you and bring you into the house of my mother, she who used to teach me. I would give you spiced wine to drink, the juice of my pomegranate. I've said, and I think I've become convinced of this reading the whole book, that the pomegranate must have been his favorite fruit because it pops up throughout the whole book. So she says, if you were my brother, then if I found you outside, I could bring you into the house, no problem. Nobody would think anything of it. It would be great to have that kind of access to each other and that ability to show my affection for you out in public. And notice again, throughout the book, it's striking to me that the woman's voice really is the dominant voice in the book. It really feels to me like this book was written by a woman, and that she's looking at this whole marriage thing from the perspective of a woman. And even though the man plays a very prominent role throughout the whole thing, the dominant voice is that of the woman. And it's interesting to me, to her, every time she talks about her house, she talks about it as her mother's house. And it's very clear that her mother has had a profound impact on how she understands her own future family life, her own future marriage, her own future home that she hopes to build. Every time she talks about her home, it's my mother's home. And here she makes it explicit, she who used to teach me. Her mother has taught her everything she knows about family and love and life. And she wants very much to emulate her. She wants very much to build a home where she delights in her husband and her husband delights in her, and where the two of them raise virtuous children. She longs for that. She says, if I found you outside and we were in this circumstance, I could bring you into the house and nobody would think anything of it. I would give you spiced wine to drink, the juice of my pomegranate. This is a repeated refrain from back at the beginning of the book. His left hand is under my head. In fact, I believe this is the third time it appears in the book. And his right hand embraces me. She describes being in his arms and swooning in his embrace. And she again repeats the warning to her friends that she has repeated twice before. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, that you not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. I think it's very important to recognize that as a dominant theme in the book. We begin with it, it's in the middle of the book, we come to it at the end of the book. Love is a powerful, wonderful, precious thing. And because it is so important, you don't want to play around with it. You don't want to rush into it. You don't want to be reckless and foolish when it comes to this. If there's anything in life you want to get right, marriage is it. Don't mess around with it. Don't treat it lightly. And she gives this final word of warning. Don't stir up or awaken love until it pleases. Don't get ahead of it. Let it take place in the right way, in the right time, and give things their proper time. Now the daughters of Jerusalem respond back. And they kind of paint a picture for us of the setting. Who is that coming up from the wilderness leaning on her beloved? So apparently the woman is arriving from somewhere and is arriving leaning on her beloved. Now, given as the thing continues, it appears that her brothers are there. So I'm kind of thinking that they've arrived at her home and that her friends are there and her brothers are there, and they come up and here they show up and she's leaning on him. Now, you might be tempted to tie this into what we were looking at last week, this idea of them going out into the countryside and loving one another and doing this marital thing of the bed and breakfast. But given the context of what develops here, and the fact that immediately following this, her brothers are going to ask some questions about whether she's been chaste, and she responds in the affirmative, yes, I have been. I don't think then that we can tie this into that. I think that was the dream sequence. We're back into the waking world, where they are courting and have not yet been married. And so when she's coming back, I don't think they're coming from an extensive time out alone in the countryside. I think there's a different setting. And as we continue reading, I'll explain what I think the setting is. But what I think is that she is bringing him home to introduce him, at the very least, to her brothers. So it's kind of a meet the family type thing. This is the guy, and I want to introduce you to my family. Everybody knows that kind of frightening moment when you find the one you think is the one, and you're kind of wondering how your parents and your siblings are going to treat them and how abusive they're going to be to them, that kind of thing. So that's the situation I envision here. Then she says, under the apple tree I awakened you. There your mother conceived you. There she who bore you was in labor. It's the same term there, but it has both meanings of conceiving and also being in labor. Some translations will just say the same thing twice, but I think by repeating it, they're trying to nuance the two meanings of that term. So she says, I woke you up under the apple tree. What's significant about this apple tree in his life? Well, she says that it was under this apple tree that he was conceived. It was under this apple tree that his mother went into labor with him. Now, either his mom spent a lot of time under the apple tree, or maybe this is an apple tree. Of course, I'm reading into this, but maybe this is an apple tree out by his house. Maybe this apple tree overhangs a part of his house, say his parents' bedroom. But there's something about this setting. She says, I found you in this place that is tied to where your life began. And it began in this loving relationship between your parents. And this is where they conceived you. This is where, and again, she ties it to his mother, not his father. Your mother conceived you there. Your mother went into labor with you there. Your life began here. And that is the same location where I just woke you up. And yes, it could just be you were napping and I woke you up and said, let's come home. But maybe there's a little more to that idea. Maybe the idea of, I awakened you to love. Didn't he say that he was going about his business when all of a sudden he ran into her and found that he was like somebody had put him on a chariot and turned him into a prince among his own people. He was kind of going about his business. We saw in the very first chapter, she was the initiator of the relationship. She was the one who called to him and invited him into this relationship. So when she says, I awakened you, I think it's more than just the picture of waking him up from sleep. I think it's the idea that she awakened him to this amazing relationship they're contemplating entering into. She awakened him to this marital love that they're pursuing together. And it's fitting. It kind of comes full circle. If that's where his mother began his life, in her own marriage relationship, and bore him there, and that's where he started, now things have come full circle because he has also found his mate. And they, too, are contemplating building a home and a family. So, from here, we reach, I think, the two verses that are the climax of the book, Song of Songs. These are the verses you hear read in weddings. I think this whole story has been illustrating some of the pains and difficulties and agonies of love, as well as the ecstasy and the joy and the celebration that is meant to be marital love. And I think we come at this point, and she puts into words what this love is about. She says, did I skip a verse? Thank you. There we go. She tells him, set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. She is asking him to make her his signet seal. Now, there are two ways you did signet things. You could have a ring that has some kind of a carving on it, and when you press it into hot wax, that seals, it's kind of like your signature. Nobody else has that particular design on their ring. Another way they would do it is with a little cylinder. And you'd take like a semi-precious stone and make a hollow it through the center, and then you would carve something along the sides, and then you would roll that cylinder on hot wax, and it would leave kind of a rectangular imprint. When she talks about him hanging it hanging it on a cord around his neck so that it lies next to his heart, that's kind of the image she's painting of a cylinder seal that would be hanging around his neck and close to his heart, or on his wrist as part of some kind of a bracelet. So she's saying, I want to become the thing that is most intimately bound with your word and your bond. Because a cylinder seal like this is something you did that bound you to something. You signed contracts with this. It was something that tied you to whatever you were saying, whatever you were promising. It was your word and your bond. And she says, I want to be that to you. She's not describing this relationship as some casual encounter, as some casual connection, but she wants to become so intimately tied to him that she stands as his oath as His Word itself. I think there's a very strong reference there to the marriage oath and the way that binds two people together into one, so that one is no longer separable from the other. You are not two once you get married. You have joined yourselves to become one. In many ways, what you do with your marriage is a reflection to the world of your oath, of your word. She says this because this is the context for this love, this bond, this binding together of two lives that happens with marriage. And now she describes the kind of love that accompanies this oath. For love is strong as death. Passion is fierce as the grave. Is it any use negotiating with death? Has anybody been able to talk death out of taking us? Death has a 100% success rate. Even God, although it was for the task of defeating death, accepted death upon Himself. You want to talk about something unrelenting? That's a good image of it. Something nobody can break. That's a good image of it. She says that's what love is like. It's as strong as death. It's as final as death. It's as unrelenting as death, and parallels that with passion is fierce as the grave. That word passion could also be translated zeal or jealousy, but I don't think the idea is to put two contrasting ideas. I think they're two parallel ideas. I think passion is the better translation for that word. If love is as strong as death, this passion that fuels this love or that accompanies this love, this passion that has been the topic of the whole book, likewise is fierce as the grave. We're not talking about some temporary arrangement, some convenience thing. Let's sign this paper so that we pay less taxes or something. That's absurd. You're talking about entering into an arrangement with each other, entering into an oath with each other, a bonding together with each other, where you admit no breaking of this, with the firm resolve of death itself. As unwilling to negotiate as the grave. Its flashes are flashes of fire, a blazing flame. Some of your translations there might say the flame of the Lord. And that's because it's a weird word there. It's all the same word, this flame, but it has an ending with a yod and a hey. So in poetry sometimes that's Yah, which is a shortened form of Yahweh. So some Bibles read it that way. The reason I think it's meant to be an intensive suffix on the word is that the Masoretic text, where in medieval times they added vowels to the consonants of the Hebrew text, they didn't vowel point it so that it would read Yah. Also the Septuagint, which is a very ancient, it's like 200 BC translation of the Old Testament into Greek, they did not translate it as that it's the flame of the Lord. So for both of those reasons, I think the idea here is not that it's God's flame, but that it is a blazing or huge or unstoppable wildfire type of flame. Again, I don't think it affects the meaning a whole lot. But the idea of, she's saying that love is like a fire that cannot be put out. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it. She's describing love as something that does not surrender, that does not throw in the towel, that has the firm commitment and resolve of death itself. One final thing she has to say about love is that it's not for sale. It's not something given for convenience. If a man offered for love all the wealth of his house, he would be utterly despised. There are cynics out there who describe marriage as prostitution. You ever heard that? That a woman gives her body to a man so that in exchange he will pay for everything. That's the way some people think marriage works. It's an arrangement where sex is given in exchange for goods. That's not at all what God meant when He instituted marriage. Marriage is the binding of two lives into one. And it has nothing to do with money. This commitment of lives is not dependent on wealth. And it is not purchased with money. There's a bit of a jab here at King Solomon, who was so wealthy, he was able to accumulate 1,000 sexual partners. Yeah, he paid for a lot of wives. That's not what God wanted marriage to be. You don't purchase this. It's two hearts, two souls, freely given one to the other. And money can be there or not. That's not going to be what this relationship is dependent upon. And if money problems throw your marriage into a tailspin, maybe your heart is on the wrong thing. Maybe your heart isn't where it needs to be. Because that's not what marriage is for. So now the brothers show up. We have a little sister and she has no breasts. Clearly they're exaggerating, because her breasts have featured prominently throughout the whole book. So now they're describing her as being too young. That's what they're trying to say. We have a little sister, and she's still a girl. She's not ready for marriage. So I guess she shows up leaning on this guy, and their immediate response is, okay, our little sister is not ready for this. She's not ready for this kind of a relationship. And they have some questions about her. They see her show up with him like this. What shall we do for our sister on the day when she is spoken for? In other words, what do we do when somebody shows up and says they want to marry her? What do we do? If she is a wall, we will build on her a battlement of silver. But if she is a door, we will enclose her with boards of cedar. Now, I think the metaphors here are hard to miss. They suggest two options for their sister who's just showed up, who knows from where, leaning on this guy. They say, what do we say about our sister? Is she a wall or is she a door? What does a wall serve for? A wall is meant to keep people out, right? What's a door for? You put a door in a wall to let people in, right? Because you need an opening that people can come in. So they're asking, have you fended off the sexual advances of this guy? Have you been a wall? Have you kept yourself chaste? Or have you opened yourself up? Have you invited him in? Have you not been chaste? What are you, sister? Are you a wall or a door? And what we do right now is going to depend greatly on which of those two you are. If you're a wall, we will crown you with majesty, with battlements of silver. We will adorn you and praise you for your virtue. But if you have been a door, we're putting a stop to this. We're boarding it up. She responds, I was a wall. Very clearly, she's telling her brothers, no hanky-panky, nothing's gone on here. We've kept it the way it needs to be kept. We have not done anything inappropriate. And she says, now about me not having any breasts, that's dumb. My breasts were like towers, she says. Okay, again, maybe she's exaggerating on the opposite side of things, but she's saying, guys, it's time. I'm ready for this. I am old enough for this. And we haven't done anything foolish. We haven't gotten ahead of ourselves. We haven't messed anything up. But this is the real deal. This is serious and this is important. She says, then I was in his eyes as one who finds peace. The idea of somebody who's restless and finally finds his rest, or the idea of somebody who's war weary and finally the fighting stops. She says, when he found me, that's what it was like for him. When he found me, he finally found his rest, what he had been looking for. Now notice, this is what she says kind of sealed the deal for him. I was a wall. You remember back at the beginning when he shows up and says, let's go out into the countryside, and the friends say, watch out, there are foxes that will ruin budding vineyards. And she says, you know what, guy, I love you to death, but we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Go away. Let's not do this today. And that is followed by a nightmare where she can't find him. She's lost him. He's gone from her life. All that fear that she felt for turning him away and saying, no, we need to slow down. We need to be careful. She says, the fact that I was a wall, the fact that I had the courage to tell him, no, we have to be careful. That was what sealed the deal for him. When I said no, that's when he realized, this is the kind of woman I want to marry. I want to marry a virtuous woman. I want to marry somebody with the courage to tell me no when I'm wrong. And the wisdom to see when there is danger and to warn me about it. I want to marry that kind of a person because that kind of a person keeps her promises. I don't have to worry about a wife like that. If she's virtuous with me, she will be virtuous in all of her relationships. It was her willingness to say no that for him sealed it. That made him recognize, this is who I want to be my wife. Young people, that's the kind of spouse you want. You want somebody who will treasure you for that, not reject you. If you're in a relationship with somebody who is out of there the minute you say no to something, then good riddance. You just dodged a bullet. You don't want to be married to a person like that. You want to be married to somebody who loves and treasures virtue and honesty, and whose word is his bond, and who expects the same of you. That's the kind of person you can build a life with. You want to be that kind of person. And you want to hold out until you find another one who is like that. Now he speaks up. Your Bible may say this is her speaking. I'm convinced it's him. So I think he speaks up at this point. And he kind of, it's almost like a little parable or a little word picture here. He talks about King Solomon, and I've said throughout this series, I do not believe King Solomon wrote this book. I think he only features in the book as a dream sequence where he stands as the glorious picture of this shepherd man when he's on his wedding day. He's been elevated to such a stature that he's as glorious as King Solomon. But I don't think King Solomon himself actually really appears in the book. I don't think he's the one wooing this woman. I think it's the shepherd boy. And I think this book is a criticism of King Solomon's approach to marriage. The Bible is critical of how Solomon did his married life. So he speaks up and says, Solomon had a vineyard in Baal Hamon. There's no place we know of by that name, so it might be a made-up word. Baal means Lord, and Hamon can mean wealth. It can mean a multitude, a large crowd. It can mean pomp and circumstance. All of these apply very well to what King Solomon built. So King Solomon, in this place where he's Lord of wealth and crowds of people and pomp and circumstance, this place that represents kind of the wealth and glory of Solomon's kingdom, He let out the vineyard to keepers. Each one was to bring for its fruit 1,000 pieces of silver. I don't think it's any mistake that that's the exact number of the amount of wives and concubines that Solomon had. I think in this parable, the coins are standing for the wives that he's accumulated. And he's accumulated wives like you accumulate money. Like the more you have, the better. And he's got 1,000, and it comes from this whole aristocracy that surrounds him and that supports him and that feeds him, all these young maidens and all these surrounding kingdoms that want to be in treaties with him, give him princesses to marry so that they seal these treaties. And it's this financial system that he has used to build his married life. Contrast that to what this shepherd boy has. He says, my vineyard, my very own, is before me. You, O Solomon, may have the 1,000, and the keepers of the fruit, 200. He's contrasting what they have with this completely different way to go about relationships. Solomon was a collector of wives, and it was about how many women can I sleep with. That's what he did. And it was about impressing people with his ability to attract so many women so that he becomes the top guy, the greatest representative of it, with 1,000 to choose from. But all of the people surrounding him, the aristocracy in Jerusalem, they're stepping over themselves trying to emulate him. And if he's got 1,000, they want at least 200. What a sad way to go about marriage. And his response to that is, Solomon, keep your 1,000. Your cronies, you keep your 200. I don't care. I've got the one I need. I need nothing else. I would today repeat the same thing to our hip-hop kings and our Hollywood stars who burn through relationships like people are trash. You keep your harem of people. I've got my one. I'm good. We as a church need to stand up and show this world that there's a different way to do marriage. That sex should never be a predatory pursuit. And that it should never be handed out without a lifelong commitment. A serious commitment. Not, let's see if this thing works out, but I will love you till the day I die. Love strong as death. He turns his attention to his beloved, to the farmer girl, and says, "Oh, you who dwell in the gardens with companions," and he's, I think, referencing the daughters of Jerusalem, "with companions listening for your voice, let me hear it." He asks her to speak up, and she speaks up. "Make haste, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or a young stag on the mountains of spices." This is the very similar to what she told him that day when he asked her to go out into the countryside. Again, she sends him away. But I think this time without any of the angst, without any of the fear that she felt the first time she sent him away. They're both on the same page. They know what they're up to. And they are courting, and they are eagerly awaiting the moment when they will be married, and they begin this shared life together. But they are content in their courtship period to be building the relationship that will sustain a marriage until death parts them. And so ends Song of Songs. I think if there's anything this book teaches us, it's that love is a powerful, powerful thing. And that it is precious. And marriage in particular is a precious treasure that needs to be guarded with chastity leading into it, and a commitment that offers no relenting, no stopping, no turning back. You go into it and this is it. You enter into it until your grave. Don't get married just to see what happens. If that's where you are, you're not ready for this. Learn some things about love so that when you do enter into marriage, you're not just trying to see if this sticks. You have given yourself heart and soul, and there's no takebacks. That's what marriage is meant to be. That's what we need to tell people marriage is. But you know, this unrelenting, this love that will never give up, that really is the way all of our loves need to be working. Isn't that the way Jesus has loved us? To the grave. And isn't that the way He calls us to love? As He loved us? So, yes, this is the way we are to love in marriage, but it's the way we're to love, period. We commit ourselves to seeking the good of the other above our own. And we don't just do it when it's fun. We don't just do it when it's convenient. We do it until death takes us and our opportunity to give our love is ended. That's the way we love our children. That's the way we love our fellow church members. That's the way we love the world we are pursuing and sharing Christ with. Don't be half-hearted about love. Let it be everything it's supposed to be. We're going to sing a song of invitation. I'd like to ask the musicians to come forward. While we're singing, I want to ask you to consider prayerfully if God is calling you to make some kind of a commitment. It could be about relationships in your life. It could be about marriage. It could be about relationships that have nothing to do with marriage, but just about your commitment to loving others as Christ has called us to do. Whatever it is God puts on your heart this morning, please come while we sing. Let's all stand. Ron and Sandra and Steve and Patty, could you help me with the invitation? Please come while we sing.